If you haven't heard of Hana-Rawhiti Maipi-Clarke, then you're missing out because she's a little bit of a firecracker in our parliament, whether it's her doing a haka, a waiata, something of the sort. She's interesting to listen to even if she's full of it. She is undoubtedly full of it. And I think there's part of me that just acknowledges that she is born to be in politics. Because as we all know, majority of politicians couldn't give two shits about doing anything of value for you. They're just there to talk. Well, at least that seems to be the case with a good many on the current opposition benches. Hana-Rawhiti Maipi-Clarke is no different. Now, she is an MP for Te Pāti Māori, and recently she was in the House trying to rip Winston Peters a new one. You see, Winston Peters is the koro of politics in this country. He is basically the most renowned Māori politician in the history of this nation. So when a young buck who was younger than myself, and that's telling you something, right? I'm only 24, younger than myself, who has only been in Parliament a few months, is attempting to rip the wisest and oldest of them all a new one, well, I mean, you're undoubtedly going to expect it falls flat. Now, of course, everyone that supports Te Pāti Māori or the left in general are kind of rallying around this, saying this is absolutely magnificent. She did a brilliant job there. But, I mean, if we actually listen to what she says, she doesn't say much of substance. And there was one particular phrase that she repeated, which was more of a slur and an insult, a racial insult, than anything else. I'm sure, given the fact that it was a racial insult consistent with the ethnicity that she herself is, you're not going to blink twice at it. Nonetheless, she's still saying it because she views herself as someone who has a superior way of viewing the world as the Māori woman that she is.
5 seconds, and where I come from, where you come from, you listen to your elders, okay?
I find it very interesting that one person in this Parliament is so triggered by me, so intimidated of me.
Yes.
Not once did I mention, not once did I say anything over here. I sat. So if we want to go there, let's go there. No mai ki tō mātou nei whare, no mai ki tōku nei marae, haere ki te kōrero atu ki oku nei kaumātua, haere ki te kōrero ki oku nei ruruhi korei heke o ngā tirangi, no ngā haue whao te motu, hara mai ki te kōrero, maumau tō toto Māori, maumau tō toto Māori, maumau tō toto Māori.
Now, as far as I'm concerned, especially with how that ended, she's probably trying to get in the running for the most arrogant member of Parliament right now. I mean, that final little right at the end, right? That's straight out of the Dolores Umbridge playbook. If you don't know who Dolores Umbridge is, well, then you're fundamentally missing out on life. She is the beautiful pink princess that is in her 60s in Harry Potter. So, of course, you're missing out in that respect. Now, Dolores Umbridge has that level of arrogance about her, where everything she says just makes her feel good about herself. That's something that Hana-Rawhiti Maipi-Clarke is really embracing here. So she's gone off on a rant that all of the stuff she said in English was insignificant. She was suggesting that people are triggered by her and whatever. I don't know what the truth to that is, but obviously she was looking to pick a fight in some respect. And then she goes off and says a bunch of stuff in Māori, and unfortunately I cannot tell you what specifically she said. However, I do know what she said at the end. At the end, she was repeating a phrase 2 or 3 times, and that phrase more or less translates to waste of Māori blood. As in, Winston Peters is a waste of his own blood, or he's essentially, in her eyes, he is not Māori enough. He does not have the right beliefs. He does not use his Māori blood in accordance with what she believes Māori should. And that's a consistent belief that you kind of see amongst those in Te Pāti Māori, those who support Te Pāti Māori. Unless you think a certain way, well, you're fundamentally not Māori enough. You're not a true Māori. You don't believe in upholding Māori values or advancing Māori causes unless you do it in accordance with what these individuals deem the right way. But this is just kind of stupid stuff, right? This is relatively insignificant. on her part, but I wanted to highlight the arrogance here because I mean it's hard to say, or it's hard to make an argument against that being an arrogant response. I mean, especially with how it ended. And I think it speaks to a level of entitlement she has in her position, the fact that she's in this position of power at such a young age as well, and that's giving her a power trip a little bit. She believes that she is the face of Māori going into the future, and perhaps she is to some extent. But to take that out on a senior politician, on the deputy prime minister of this country, in a way where you are effectively using a racial slur against him, is just unacceptable behaviour in the House. Now, additionally, she's a bit of an actor. As you can tell, she's very capable of being dramatic, of expressing a point, even if that point is a little bit vague, but at least being able to instill some emotion, be able to express herself verbally through facial expressions and so forth. She does that very, very well. The time where this helped, and the time where this helped her, was during the election campaign where she told quite a few porkies. Now, if you weren't familiar with her at the time, basically she claimed that her house was ram raided, that someone committed a breaking and entering on her house, and additionally that she had her house or her property vandalized on 2 occasions and received very, very bad letters pertaining to maybe death threats or something like that. Now, the last 4 things I mentioned are potential. So, for example, the 2 instances of vandalism to a fence or a property and potentially, the hate mail or whatever. That stuff sounds viable. That happens all the time. I myself receive at least the hate mail. So, I can understand her receiving that. But the claims of her having a breaking and entering committed against her and her property, and also a ram raid, simply nonsense. Absolutely nonsense. Let's start with the breaking and entering. She claims that the 60-year-old male who she met at a community event, who decided to stop by her house to wish her luck, was and then invited in by someone else on the property, and then later asked to leave, not too long afterwards, asked to leave, and he did so willingly and willfully. That is breaking and entering according to her, and even the police couldn't agree with her that it was breaking and entering. And considering that the guy that was interviewed on the news, he spoke to the entire world and told them exactly what happened, seemed very, very genuine, and the police couldn't really say anything to the contrary. The claim that she had any form of breaking and entering committed against her is just nonsense. I mean, seriously, there were multiple people in the house, for starters. This guy is like 60. So she wants us to believe that a guy who's like 60 years old, with multiple people in the house, committed breaking and entering. Like, seriously. If the police cannot substantiate that he committed breaking and entering with those facts in mind, well then, quite frankly, it never happened. And so that was the first moment you realize, okay, this chick is going to make up a lot of nonsense to get sympathy, to get attention, and it's probably going to be something that is characteristic of her political career. But arguably, that's not even the worst one. The worst one's the claim that her house was ram raided. Does she know what a ram raid is? Something tells me she doesn't know what a ram raid is, and considering the ram raid statistics by ethnicity, that's a really good thing to hear. Or maybe she just heard it in the news, heard that ram raids were a really big common crime at the moment, and so thought, oh, that'll be catchy. That sounds like the place where a lie would start, right? Something that's trendy in the news and it seems to fit the narrative, and you want to be playing the victim to get attention, get sympathy votes, rah, rah, rah. But of course, in order for her house to have been ram raided, there needs to be evidence that a vehicle was used to ram into either her fence or some other part of her property, in which case we've got no evidence of that whatsoever. We don't have a car, we don't have an individual associated with the car, we don't have any damage of that nature to the property, seemingly. It's a very interesting claim to make, especially when it's so easily debunked by the fact that absolutely no damage resembling a ram raid has taken place. So, it just goes to show that not only has she got no credibility and hasn't had any credibility since before she was even elected, but now that she has been elected, she's on a power trip and wants to do her best to affirm her own ideologies and, quite frankly, insult some of the most senior members in New Zealand politics.